I'm going to talk about the past as a way of talking about the future because I've been involved in gaming as a creator, business person for almost 40 years, which is hard for me to believe. I did start young, I was in my teens, but still kind of spooks me when I was asked by Jessica to do this, and she said, what do you want to talk about? And I said, well, since games is only part of what I do, I don't get to just talk about games that often, so I'm going to go all in and talk about the long view. So starting off, I first got involved with computing with this device. This is my first computer I owned. Those of you that are geeks may recognize it, most of you won't. It's a TI-58 programmable computer. The TI-58 was the first programmable thing that I owned. This was really, back when I got this, which was about 1975, I think I was 13, in order to buy an actual computer, you needed a soldering gun, and I wasn't very good with soldering guns. There were some, the first Apple II came out a year or two after that. Apple I was basically almost a kid computer. So there were some very, very early super hobbyist computers. The Altair that Microsoft started out came out around this time. But this was a computer that I could own, I could afford. The calculator itself cost $100. You'll see a printer with it. There was a magnetic memory card reader for $200, but I hadn't made enough money shoveling stone, raking leaves to buy that. But the printer cost about another $100. So I got the calculator, and after I got tired of forgetting my programs, because it had 480 instructions in it, so you could write like a decent program that would do something. The displays you see wasn't that compelling, but printed out the instructions, so it would have an opcode, the opcodes printed out. So once I wrote something, I could save it by actually literally having a thermal paper read of it. So this was the very first computer I owned. It was not very good for writing anything that would be an interesting game, of course. The first game that I wrote actually started 39 years ago. So when I say 40 years of making games, I'm stretching a little bit, although I played games more than 40 years ago. This was when I was in high school. My high school, in my last year of high school, got a time-sharing relationship with a neighboring school's computer that was a DEC PDP 1134. That was a mini computer that had CRTs. We had a dedicated line that was a CRT, but not a graphic display, so a sort of a scrolling CRT that would run about 300 baud, so very slow, but for characters adequate. You wouldn't want to do any graphics with it. So I wanted to sort of try programming out. So I learned the basic on this machine, pretty good basic, or basic plus, and I wrote a game to simulate a presidential election. Even back then I was interested in politics. Interest of time and not getting all frustrated. I'm not going to talk too much about politics today, but this was a game to simulate running a presidential election. It was a great way to learn programming. I also used it as a way to learn systems programming. It turned out that the RISC operating system was not what in modern parlance you would call a secure operating system, which means that the RISC operating system could be used, among other things, to create Trojan horses. And I'm not going to say too much more about this other than that the statute of limitations has long passed. I didn't break any laws, I didn't do any damage, and I graduated from high school on time. So it was a fun experience to learn programming, and I really made it a game that in the 4 or 5 schools that used the game had limited experience, people gave me good feedback on. So I got excited about writing games. Well, roll the clock forward to 1981, which it was 36 years ago, just about now, over the summer, that IBM introduced the IBM PC. And a lot of people like me, this was how they really got into personal computing. I happened to be working for IBM. I was in college at the time, and it was the summer the IBM PC came out. One of the guys in my group worked as part of the team that made the IBM PC, so I learned a lot about it, and I got really excited about it. And with a bunch of friends in college, 4 or 5 of us pooled our money and bought one of the first IBM PCs. One thing you'll notice about this screen is it's a character screen. IBM had split the display market. Some of the screens only did monochrome characters. It was very crisp. It was very good for reading text. And then the others had graphics. The original graphics standard was 640 by 200. It was called CGA. It was very coarse, very grainy. And so the user base was split. So we thought, when we got this, PC in the fall of 1981, what can we do with this? And my friend Steve and I had the idea of making games for it. So we made a little company, a few other people got involved. And in the summer of '82, instead of doing a conventional job, we wrote games. The 2 games we came out with were called Slinx and Viper. Steve wrote most of one, I wrote most of the other. We helped each other on both of them. The one he wrote, Slinx, I think was the better of the two, but they were both fun. And I'll give you a description of Slinx. You want to make this is a review. We got a very nice review in what at the time it was PC Magazine, and the reviewer wrote the following. I think it must have been an English major. The highlight of the game is the growing length of the Slinx body every time it catches food. The more food it eats, the more the screen brims with crisscrossing coils of Slinx. To get more food, players must maneuver the Leviathan snake through a maze of its own body. Well, if that game sounds familiar to people, I'm guessing this is why. How many, raise your hand if you ever played Snake on a Nokia phone. So about 15 years before that, my friend Steve and I wrote a precursory version of this game. We didn't have quite as many users as this, but we sold, I don't know, 10,000 of them or something, enough to make it a good summer job. It was a fun game, as you see. The gameplay lived on in a similarly constrained device. Part of what made this game work is that it used extended character mode, as this one did, to make really good graphics on a non-graphic display. And that was part of our trick, to sort of think, how can we maneuver around the constraints to make a fun game? And the guys at Nokia must have been fans of our early game. They followed suit. So, roll the clock forward to 1983. I finished university on the East Coast and moved out to Seattle to join a little software company called Microsoft. It was a great time to be in Seattle, as it is now. Obviously, I've stayed 34 years later, so something must be great about it. And at the time, Microsoft was not that heavily involved in games. So in the decade I spent at Microsoft, I didn't spend that much time in gaming, to be honest with you, although I kept my passion for it. One game I was involved with was Microsoft Flight Simulator. Microsoft had a licensing agreement with the genius who made this product, a guy named Bruce Artwick, and for a period of time, just for a year or so, I was responsible for helping the product get to market. I met with Bruce and his team in the Midwest a few times. Brilliant guy, did incredible work, unfortunately, I probably added very little value to the product itself. The good news is it was an amazing product, lived on for many, many years, people would ask Microsoft why it was in this product, and Bill said, because it's a great game. And it was absolutely right. It was an incredible game. What it was able to do with the power of PCs back in the mid-'80s was amazing, went way beyond what almost any other game could do. And it was fun, and it had a lot of different modes in it, from casual to more serious type gaming. So roll the clock forward another decade. So I left Microsoft after 10 years and started RealNetworks. And the thing that Real is most famous for, which what we started with, was inventing internet streaming and doing the first streaming audio system in the market, following that up with many, many years. And that's, video and audio and deep technology continues to be a huge passion of mine, something that I get super excited about. And we could talk about computer vision, we could talk about many other bits of the innovation, machine learning that are coming down the pike that are relevant to this. But I've always been super interested in games. So about 5 years into the company, a really smart entrepreneurial guy called Andrew Wright said, hey, we should start a games group. And I thought, well, okay, we got a lot of distribution with the Real Player. Maybe we can use that as sort of a platform to get things going. And Andrew and his team did an incredible job of building what became the leading PC downloadable games distribution service and system called Real Arcade. We launched it about 15 years ago. It's had an incredible run. We still have a version of it that is out that serves a nice base of subscribers. So we started out purely as a distributor. Then along the way, we got involved first with Gamehouse and then with Xylem, of taking some of the most successful developers on our platform and bringing them in to the business. So we got involved, started with distribution and got involved in the games business. As Nick mentioned, one of Gamehouse's great games was Collapse, which had a phenomenal run associated with it. And then one of the things that came out of that, which was interesting, is an idea that our team in Europe had, which was mixing gameplay with storytelling. So in 2006, that team came up with a game called Delicious, which we're now about 15 versions into it. So many of you have probably played various forms of Delicious. And Delicious is a time management game, but it's a time management game with a twist, where it originally started out just as a very light time management game, and then it started introducing an element of storytelling. And the storytelling part got better and better and stronger over time. That's one of the reasons why the franchise has been so powerful and has been so successful for so long, is that the lead character in Delicious Emily, people really developed a connection with, much like they like a character on their favorite TV series. They develop almost a personal relationship with that character. Well, after about 2010, I stepped away from Real. The guys that built this product stepped away, we took some time off. And then in 2012, mid-2012, I came back, and a year or so later, the two genius founders of Xylon came back, Rutger Peters and Eric Goossens. I think actually Rutger may be here with his son. He was traveling on the West Coast. They live in the Netherlands. They created what I'll call for now Gamehouse 2.0, where they, rather than focus primarily on the games and secondarily on the storytelling, they've inverted the pyramid. They've switched over to focus on the storytelling and also have great gameplay involved. And they've done an incredible job of really developing a new genre that is a combination of great storytelling and great gameplay. And they've created this brand, Gamehouse Original Story, which to the many hundreds of thousands of fans we have on Facebook and social media, the increasing number of users we have, free and paid, it's become primarily a mobile franchise, although it also has a PC side to it still. And it's become an amazing phenomenon. I'm incredibly proud of the work that team's done. The team is primarily based in Europe, headquartered in the Netherlands, outside of Amsterdam, in a beautiful city called Eindhoven, and also has studios in several different European countries. And they do an amazing job of creating stories that are in various ways fun, funny, moving, compelling. Their most successful series over the last couple of years is called Heart's Medicine. And I want to show you a little bit of something about Heart's Medicine. Heart's Medicine, think of it as a little bit like Grey's Anatomy or one of these other medical dramas, which is a TV genre that has demonstrated over the decades that it's a very compelling genre because it involves something dramatic happening, which is literally you've got to try to save lives, and fast-paced and exciting, and then characters, generally the doctors and the people associated with the hospital, where you develop an emotional connection with them. And the lead character in this series is called Allison Hart, and I'm going to show you a little bit of a segment from not the game itself, but a review of it. And what I love about this review is it's a review written from a different perspective. The primary audience of Heart's Medicine are women. 70% of the audience are females, it turns out. But it's a great game for everybody. I love playing it. My sons and daughter both enjoy playing it. And this particular reviewer takes a very different cut on it, as you'll see, which I think is an awesome review. We got the audio up?
Game. I was going to say welcome to a Kale. Top of the morning to you laddies. My name is Jacksepticeye and welcome to a game. I was going to say welcome to a Kale. What the fuck? That doesn't even mean anything. Welcome to a game called Heart's Medicine Hospital Heat. It's a sequel to a game that I hadn't even heard about before. But this just came out on Steam and I saw the trailer and it looked hilarious. It looked really fun. I don't know why. Because it looked like this cheesy sitcom kind of hospital game that I could play where, like, it just showed a girl saying, "Please, Mom," and the whole house was on fire, or some dude walking on a couple kissing in the closet. I don't know, it looked like a really cheesy 80s hospital sitcom, so I really wanted to play it. Could be right this way. Good job, Brian. I knew you had it in you, you little fuck.
Go for it.
Oh, no! She dead! What'd I do? I'm afraid this might sting a little. Stab! Oh, remove the glass. So this is another part of the game. It's kind of like those surgery games that I've played before. Remove the glass. Yes, this will go nice in the new mirror I'm making for Sandra. It's not it's not one-way glass. Shit. So wait, it is one-way. Two-way. Fuck. I don't know what I'm saying. Sophia, please stick with me. Okay, gonna bandage her up good. Yes. Sophia Gomez, don't you fucking worry. Time to go. Oh, yes! No, this doctor doesn't skip leg day! Here we go. We can see people are starting to make their way outside. We can only hope that everyone... I'm not sure what's happening now. It's the superhero. The hospital, the Doctor Avengers are here. It appears someone is trying to get into the hospital? Fuck yeah, it is. Oh, it's Dr. Grace. Here to save the day. Or Allison. I can't get you any closer, Allison. Drag. Fuck yeah! See, this is awesome! This is so cool! She's getting ready to jump into the building. Click on the spot on the ground to jump. You fucking got this, Allison. There you go, nail the landing. Superhero landing. Very hard in the knees. She's got this. She got a fire dousing kit right inside this. You can do this. Okay, click on the spot to jump. What happens if I don't? What happens if I click the wrong spot? Can I jump into the hole? Oh man. There you go, you got this. Superhero by day, also doctor by day. It's really hard to make up my mind what job I want. Oh no, she fell in the hole anyway! Oh fuck! Hearts medicine, hospital heat.
We not only didn't pay him to write that review, his name is Jacksepticeye, by the way. He's got millions of followers on Facebook. That video's been viewed over 2 million times. But he just did it on his own. He saw the game, thought it was cool, and he had a totally different take on it that was kind of a combination of making fun of it, having fun with it, enjoying it, getting into it. And that level of emotional engagement with games is fantastic, and it's one of the things that our Gamehouse team is doing that I'm incredibly proud of. And we didn't start that. We started out making casual games where, you have a little bit of, be it a match 3 or a time management game or a hidden object game, classic casual games. And the spin our team's taken on it of actually making stories that people develop an emotional connection with is quite compelling. And hope you will check out the game as well as Jacksepticeye's full review. I hope you'll enjoy both. So just to wrap up, because I know this is a sort of a short thing, and Nick and I will have a few minutes for questions afterwards. If I was going to try and summarize in one slide what I learned in 40 years of being involved with games, there are some fairly simple things. And the first one is almost a cliche, and probably is a cliche, but it's true, which is the game fun, right? Because if the game isn't fun, nothing else matters. And, there's all these different, you can do all this user testing, you can, but if you got to just play the game. And the best game companies that I know, and the ones I've been involved with, literally will just have a time where they just sit and play the games. And they'll get to first playable as fast as they can. They'll iterate on it. They'll be surprised if things work really better than they thought, sometimes things worse than they thought. And that's the first rule. A second rule for me is, does it work on more than one level? And that can mean a lot of different things. Obviously, in the case of the Gamehouse original stories, do they work on the level of being a fun game and a story that you find compelling? There are many other examples of it. A game like Candy Crush, does it work on the level that the game levels themselves are fun, and then it gets your competitive juices flowing because you want to get to a higher level than your friend, you want to get to the next level. So it doesn't necessarily have to be formulaic what the multiple levels are, but to me, the games that are the perennials, the ones that really last, are the ones that work on more than one level, even though those two things might be seemingly unrelated. It's like a peanut butter cup thing with the chocolate and the peanut butter. You put them together, you get something kind of magical out of that dynamic that you wouldn't have expected. The third thing, and this goes all the way back to what I did with Slinx, 35 years ago, constraints are great opportunities for creativity. In an unconstrained world where you have an unlimited amount of time, unlimited budget, unlimited processing power, limited storage, you can build anything, but then maybe you're not going to build anything that's compelling. So to me, the fact that 35 years ago, we had to figure out how to make a fun game using the character graphics, the extended character graphics of the IBM PC to make something that was fun and visually interesting. That was a creative challenge that we rose to, and it created one of the perennial genres of games, the extended snake game. And that was something that, really excited about that. You see it time and time again, where when there's a constraint, when there's something that's really hard to do, it creates an opportunity for a creative way to solve the problem. Visited Pixar just a few weeks ago to see, with my 7-year-old, the premiere of Cars 3. And one of the things that, they have this tune where they show you all the characters and their progression. And Pixar, one of the things that was interesting was there's an octopus, because they have both the current movie and they also had Finding Dory. And one of the things that I didn't know, and maybe you guys are like super nerdy on Disney and Pixar, that the octopus in Finding Dory only has 7 legs rather than 8 legs. Because what they were finding is, and so they were rendering it, that eighth leg, the one in the back, was always awkward where to have it. So they actually decided to change the physics of an octopus, and I suppose there are some octopus that are born with only 7 legs, and they made a 7-legged octopus. That was the way they solved the constraint of rendering the octopus in a 3D way where it wouldn't look awkward where the back leg was. So it's always, to me, interesting how people use creativity to solve seemingly tricky problems. Fourth thing, and I go back to the Slinx snake example, but there are many, many others. You can even go back to, you know, original Nintendo games. If it was a game that was great 40 years ago, it's still a great game. My kid's favorite console is the classic NES, where they're playing those old school games on an HDMI plugged into a modern TV, because the gameplay is great. And if a game was great 40 years ago, it's still a great game. Having said that, and this would be my closing thought, the best games ever haven't been created yet. And that's not just a statement about how powerful VR is, which it is, how powerful AR is, which it is. It's about the unlimited potential of human creativity. And there's so many ways to riff, there's so many ways to remix, there's so many ways to innovate that I get energized. The notion, you know, of combining casual gameplay with storytelling is a new idea that 10 years ago I wouldn't have thought of having powerful. It turned out to be incredibly powerful. There are many examples of it. And that's just the thing I would say to this group, many creative people here. I know you must all feel this way because you're still doing it. It's one of the things that gets me excited about games, you know, almost 40 years after my first one, which is there's all these great new things to do. So with that, thank you all for indulging my look back over the last 40 years, and the time we have, happy to answer any questions.
First question. You've been in the industry for a while, so you've ridden all the waves, the flash-based gaming, the deluxe downloads, mobile, all the rest of stuff. Crystal ball time. We've seen tablets and mobiles. Is VR the next gaming platform? Are you bullish or bearish on VR and AR?
Well, VR and AR, I think it's important to bifurcate the two because they are, in a couple fundamental ways, totally different, but they are similar acronyms. You know, if you think about the incredible immersive power of Oculus, your platform, some of the other platforms, it's an amazing experience. I mean, I remember the first time I put a data glove on and an immersive headset on, whatever, 25, 30 years ago, and I was like, wow, this is incredible. It reminds me that all perception of reality is subjective. You know, our eyes and our ears, we may think that they're giving us an objective view of reality, but they're not. The fact that they can be faked out by something as trivial as a box covering our ears and eyes is very powerful and potent. So almost everybody has that transcendent reaction to VR. And I have no doubt there are going to be some amazing VR games created over the next 5 years. There have already been some really good ones created. But I don't think in the next 5 years VR itself is going to be a hugely transcendent phenomenon because it only applies to that level of immersive experience. Whereas AR allows you to take a reality and place it on top of the physical world that's out there. And what you see, some of the early stuff that's come out of Apple's AR kit, and some of them are great, clever ideas, like the notion of a measuring stick that you can apply to anything to see how big a couch you want to put in your living room, to see how high the windows are, you know, when you're trying to look at putting a piece of art in, how big the space is on the wall. So there are some very utilitarian use of AR, but there are so many other things. Pokemon Go is probably the high watermark in terms of hitting our culture of an AR type game, but there's so much more to come. So if I were to score in terms of massive cultural impact on a scale of 1 to 10 over the next 5 years, AR is a 10, VR is a 6. If I were to score on the scale of size of commercial opportunity for the two, AR is a 10, VR is probably a 7 or an 8 for the right genre of game, and a 4 or 5 for more casual kinds of things, just because it requires such an immersive experience. So that's not, I'm not anti-VR, just AR I think is going to dominate an impact over the next 5 years.
Okay. Any more questions? So what games are you playing and what's your favorite game? What's the game of choice at the moment?
I go in cycles. The game I'm most obsessed with, like in the last few weeks, is an old game, Scrabble. I go in cycles because I actually only pick 1 or 2 games at a time that I play actively, because if I play a game too much, if I try to play multiple games, I don't I have a too many things in my life to do that. So I've got 3 or 4 friends that I play Scrabble with who travel around the world and who are very good, and so they keep me on my toes, and that's super fun. Prior to that, it was probably, I think I did a bout with Trivia Crack for a while. I did a bout with a couple of the more go-kart games, but those are the last 2 or 3, and in 6 months it'll be a different one.
Okay.
So Rob, you guys were in video and music and games. Like, how did you handle the contention for resources over the history there of, like, what was most important to you?
Well, so as a company, games has always run kind of off to the side. We started it, we gave it some initial seed capital to get going, and it was really, because it was successful fairly quickly, we were able to it was able to sort of eat its own, sort of eat what it killed, if you will. It had enough resource to drive it. When you look at new investments, when you're doing something new, you always think, okay, what are the biggest opportunities? And so we'll sometimes make decisions that are, if it's something brand new, there's not an existing business to fund it, we'll put a little seed capital in, almost like a venture capitalist funding a startup, and we'll see how it does over the next 3 months, the next 6 months. But most of the time, and certainly our games business today, we've got a very strong existing subscription business that's been the funding engine for the growth part of the business, which is these Gamehouse original stories.
Okay, we're officially out of time. So again, help me out. A large round of applause for Sir Rob. Thank you very much for opening up.
Thanks a lot, everyone.